Very good evening, everyone. So it's a great pleasure seeing all of you here for this special webinar by our Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar. Our founding Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar, will be here in few minutes. And I must welcome all of you to this webinar. I will encourage you to ask all your questions. He will be very happy to answer your queries and doubts. You may be aware, Professor C. Rajkumar has been a Rhodes Scholar to University of Oxford and then to Harvard Law School. And before setting up OP Jindal Global University and Jindal Global Law School, he was in Hong Kong as an academician, in New York and Tokyo as lawyer, and he has a distinguished experience of building this university and law school. So I'm very happy that a lot of you from different parts of the country are able to spare your today's evening with us and to be with our Vice Chancellor. So I would like to welcome Professor C. Rajkumar, and I will encourage you to ask questions. Thank you.
A very good evening to all of you. First of all, it is indeed my proud privilege to have this session with all of you. Let me begin by saying that I sincerely hope that all of you, including the students, the parents, and your family members, all of you are adhering to the social distancing norms and are keeping yourself safe and healthy and are at home because this is indeed a very difficult time for India and the world. And the only way by which we can overcome ourselves from this crisis is to be able to follow the social distancing norms. So I just want to begin by that. I also want to say that, there is so much of uncertainty in the world today, no doubt about it. And many of you who are watching this program, maybe from 12th standard, you might be thinking about your future. You might have decided about what kind of careers you want to pursue. Your parents must also have challenges to meet, both in terms of their jobs and other things. So I want to share with you a very interesting silver lining that we saw today. So as you can see from what the news items, I'm sure you're following up, this is not about my team, but I want to spend a minute talking to you about this because one of the major challenges of this COVID-19, the coronavirus that has hit us all, the world today, is that there are effectively three stages and scenarios by which we can actually come out of it. The first is that the world has to find a cure for this. That's when we will be able to come back to some degree of normalcy. Second, we should reach in the direction of finding a vaccine, and third, we should be able to vaccinate the world or large number of people, at least a few billion people across the world. Normally, it takes a decade for a vaccine to be created, made, and then finally into market, and then vaccinated as well. The journey of our world, be it our ability to fight something like smallpox, for example, all these things took years, decades as well. Today, in this entire, tragic scenario that the world has seen, for the first time, Oxford University just has announced that there is a very good chance that we will be able to find a vaccine later this year. They have actually said that as late as October, we could actually think of having several millions of vaccines available. Of course, this is scientists speaking. The human trial for this is going to take place as early as next week. So this is one of the interesting glimmer of hope that has emerged. So I want to begin this idea of changing the world through law, by saying that one of the things that you can change the world is through research, and that's what higher education universities, institutions around the world do. And Oxford University, which is one of my alma mater, is in that journey. Moving into this today's topic, today I intend to talk to you about the theme called changing the world through law. I would like to divide this into two aspects of it. One is, of course, changing the world itself, and secondly, how law can help you do that. All of us have different motivations, when we grow up, when we are young people, when we are students, when we are in schools. And I believe, in my own experience of interacting with a large number of young people across India and around the world, I have always felt that young people have a very deep sense of idealism, and a deeper sense of commitment towards seeking change and making the world a better place. This could be because of their own upbringing, also the influences that happened in the early days of their schooling, the books they have read, or possibly even a sense of a deeper sense of connectedness to the world, in which they see what is right and what isn't, and how they can make it better. This deeper sense of innocence reflected in childhood does enable people to continue to nurture the aspirations of changing the world as they grow up as well. And I would like to believe that a lot of people who are listening to this talk also entertain that aspiration of changing the world. And so I want to begin by saying that that's a very important aspiration. And I think it's absolutely critical at all times, but definitely during these times when the world is facing a global pandemic of the kind that we are, to nurture and to facilitate and enable and continuously build on the idea that we need to change the world for the better. Of course, there are numerous ways for that, and I think it's important for us to recognize that every profession and every study, every discipline has its own ways of attempting to change the world and make the world a better place. But I want to basically say that in some ways, education should invest in human ability to seek that change. One of the purposes and goals and objectives of any form of education should be to seek social transformation, should be to be able to impact society and nation and community and the world at large and humanity. And that role and objective of education to seek change is so central to the idea of universities as well as higher education institutions. And so it's important that all of you keep that thought and that idea in mind as you think about your future and your own educational journey. It's also equally important to recognize that there are numerous problems that the world is confronted with, including our own country. And it is important for us to become sensitive about the fact that the education that we receive is in many ways a privilege that a lot of people don't get it. And so with all privilege comes responsibility. And because those of us who have got education need to have that sense of responsibility towards making an impact towards changing the world. And so in a way, if I were to recognize the importance of changing the world, I will also say that those of us who have got the privilege of good education have a greater responsibility towards changing the world. It's equally important for us to recognize that this inherent commitment and even the pursuit of changing the world for the better needs to be part of an evolutionary process whereby each of us should be able to do something or the other that can potentially make the world better. In fact, sometimes people think that for us to change the world for the better, you need to be the prime minister, or you need to be the president, or you need to be a billionaire, or you need to reach a certain age or have made certain accomplishments, or you should have got the Nobel Prize or whatever. That's not the case at all. Ordinary people, living ordinary lives across the world in their day-to-day life, regardless of whichever situation you are in, you can all and we can all make a difference to change the world for the better. And so I want to first tell you that changing the world ought to become a part of our life. It should become part of our imagination. It should become part of our living. It should become part of our thinking. It should become part of our responsibility. And that responsibility will soon convert itself into our habit and indeed our lived experiences. And that's, I think, very important for young people in particular. A lot of extraordinary lives. People haven't lived long enough to make the difference. For example, Martin Luther King died at the age of 39, and imagine he could make that huge difference to society at large less than 40. He died at the age of 39, and by that time he had led the movement for civil rights in particularly for African Americans in the United States. So in some ways, let's not wait for us to attain a certain degree of achievement or accomplishment or other forms of recognition for us to be working towards making the world a better place. In some ways, the idea of changing the world should become a very important part and parcel of our life in our ordinary lives that we live to make those contributions. Now, of course, I'm a lawyer by training, as Professor Anand Mishra, when he introduced me. I want to quickly tell you that I have done law degrees in essentially across 5 institutions around the world. I pretty much did my law degree from Campus Law Center Faculty of Law, University of Delhi, after which I did my law degree from University of Oxford, where I was a Rhodes Scholar. Then I did another law degree from Harvard Law School, where I did my master's in law. I also practiced law in New York. I'm admitted to the New York bar. And of course, I did my doctorate in Hong Kong. Of course, I did another degree called the BCom from Loyola College Madras. I've essentially have 4 law degrees and 1 other degree, which is my undergraduate degree. I want to share that because of the fact that I've had the privilege of looking at multiple jurisdictions, looking at different professions, but most importantly law. And one of the things I felt, and I was deeply inspired personally by the fact that I was convinced about the role of law and legal education and legal profession and its ability to change the world for the better. I was convinced long ago, but in my journey of being an academic in the last over 20 years, I'm even more convinced that law in all its forms and manifestations, both its study and its practice, both in its domestic and its international, also in its comparative settings, in its theory and its practice, it has enormous potential to change the world and make the world a better place. I want to start by saying, in my view, there are numerous, inspiring experiences around the world, including in our own country, where law became the central social institution, the central political institution that attempted to transform the society at large. And that continues to be the case. Of course, I'm sure the Indian freedom movement is a very stellar example of how distinguished lawyers led the freedom movement and contributed towards establishing and founding our new republic then. Of course, the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, was a lawyer. We will talk more about it in your Q&A session. He may not have been known to be a successful lawyer, but the fact that he could understand and appreciate the importance of justice and to resist colonialism and seek justice for a large number of people, its origins is clearly in relation to his study of law. Our first Prime Minister, Pandit Nehru, was a lawyer. Dr. Ambedkar, our first Law Minister and President of the Drafting Committee of the Constitutional Assembly, was a lawyer. Dr. Rajendra Prasad, our first President, was a lawyer. So lawyers pretty much led the freedom movement, and clearly they were conscious of the importance of the work that they had set out to do. So I want to begin by giving you a broad outline of what I believe changing the world through law is. This is not a theoretical framework for the pursuit of studying law. It is more my own ideas and perspectives of what I believe are the central aspects of law that will enable one to change the world for the better. And after that framework, we will talk a bit about what is really law and what we understand to be in our society. So I believe there are 10 major ideas that revolves around the notion of changing the world through law. And the first is the principle of the rule of law. It's relatively simple, but one of the most difficult, ideas to implement in any society. The principle of the rule of law is essentially about however important you are, however high you are, the law is about you. In some ways, it essentially creates an egalitarian society, a society that recognizes the importance of law, that however powerful you are, however important you are, however rich you are, regardless of whatever position you have, the law is above you, and the society ought to be governed by the principles of law rather than the powers exercised by men and women. Mostly, unfortunately, it happens to be men. So in that sense, the notions of the principle of rule of law becomes the foundation and indeed a foundational idea of changing the world through law. This principle of the rule of law is one of the most powerful and compelling notions and ideas that helps to change the world and make the world a better place. This principle, of course, is in various historical junctures, even today, in various parts of the world, and at times in some parts of India, is under challenge. And it is a constant effort for every society to make sure that they are doing everything possible to address the issue of rule of law. When those who hold power in society, in India or around the world, if they are not adhering to the law and are actually exercising powers in an arbitrary manner, according to their own whims and fancies, if they are not following and adhering to the rules and regulations that are carved out in their own societies, if they are actually violating the norms and rules and laws and even provisions of their constitutions, and are exercising powers in a manner that they shouldn't be, in those societies, rule of law is indeed threatened. In countries around the world, including in India, when law enforcement mechanisms, including police and custodial authorities in prisons and other forms of armed forces, for example, whenever they are exercising powers in a manner that they are abusing and undermining the legal and constitutional framework, rule of law is threatened. So the first and the most important principle that I would like to talk to you, and I would like you to remember for the idea of changing the world, is to adhere to the principle of the rule of law. Second is a very powerful principle, which again is eternal and is a constant effort to achieve, which is the pursuit of seeking justice. All of us in this world, all of us, including the ones all of you are watching, we all have a deeper sense of wanting to have justice. Those who are victims of any kind, victims of crime or victims of abuse of power, or those who are vulnerable particularly, we might have a deeper sense of wanting to ensure that justice is served. But even without being a victim, all of us feel that we should have justice in our lives. And so the pursuit of seeking justice is a very important and a noble mission for anybody who wants to change the world for better. And so the 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 pursuit of justice that I'm talking about is an eternal pursuit, and one should never lose guard and take it for granted. Even in societies where there are well-established legal systems, including institutions that are designed to protect and promote access to justice, there are, at various points of time, there are challenges to the effort to promote access to justice. And so one of the ways by which we can change the world through law is to be able to build an effective system of justice. But I want to remind you that not all the time law ensures justice. It is indeed the goal of a society that attempts to create justice to ensure that laws will indeed enable us to achieve justice. But there are numerous cases, even when law does not necessarily lead to justice. And that's been a very old debate in the field of law itself, that to what extent laws are indeed contributing to justice. But those of us who are, studying law, particularly in academic institutions, understanding the foundations of law, the purpose of law, the sociological dimensions of law, the jurisprudential dimensions of law, we are conscious of the fact that our goal in our society will be to ensure that the rhetoric of law on the one hand and the reality of law on the other, the gap between the two is lessened, so that we are able to see more justice in our attempt to establish a rule of law society. That's the second major principle when it comes to the pursuit of changing the world through law. The third element of changing the world through law, in my view, is to protect the principle of equality and ensure non-discrimination. All of us in our own lives might have had opportunities at times to either face discrimination or even have seen people who have been discriminated. Most constitutions of the world, including Indian Constitution, has attempted to legislate and provide provisions that will protect equality, that will ensure non-discrimination. India has had, thousands of years of a caste system that has discriminated a large number of people. And when the Constitution was written, specifically there were provisions put in the Constitution, including the Part 3 of the Constitution, the fundamental rights provision of the Constitution, which essentially talks about how to ensure the right to equality. Article 14 of the Constitution talks about the right to equality. But there's another provision of the Constitution which talks about, untouchability. And Article 17 is one of those provisions which specifically talks about it. So in some ways, discrimination and the pursuit of equality is a very critical goal which we need to pursue in our effort to change the world. Every society has gone through this, and this problem remains. People being discriminated on account of religion or caste or language or sexual orientation or so many ways, or gender, all kinds of ways by which people get discriminated. There is a natural desire for our effort to change the world, to ensure that we are able to achieve equality and indeed pursue non-discrimination. In the United States, the effort to achieve equality and pursue non-discrimination is a continuous journey, even in very advanced democracies such as the United States. I mentioned about the caste system in India, but also in the United States context, there have been number of difficulties and challenges that country faced in its own history, both particularly with regard to African Americans and the discrimination that has been meted out to them. and it ultimately led to a major judgment of the US Supreme Court in the decision called the Brown versus Board of Education, and in which the notions of equality and non-discrimination was further underlined, but also said that they also said that separate but equal ways of treating is not enough. You need to have you cannot have segregation in any form, and creating ghettos and separated communities even when they are independently treated equally is not good enough. So that is the journey of equality and non-discrimination. And even today, in many parts of the world, including India, there are cases of discrimination of different kinds. And it's important for us to work towards the pursuit of changing the world through law, using our own conscience when it comes to ensuring equality and pursuing non-discrimination. The fourth aspect of it, which is something very important, is that even when laws are made, it's important for our goal and our ability to change the world to challenge unjust laws. To challenge unjust laws is part of our effort to create a better world. The best of democracies, and let alone authoritarian forms of government, do end up passing laws which are not necessarily good, not necessarily just. And so, as lawyers, as people who are in the study of law, as aspiring individuals, just because something is law, that does not mean it is right. It's important for each one of us to measure the law and use the yardsticks of what we will understand as justice, and to use that yardstick and recognize whether it is a just law or an unjust law. And it's important for us to not to hesitate to pursue the cause of addressing, challenging unjust laws through democratic means. The second part is important because one of the ways by which democracies work is not to use violence of any form, even when we are expressing our dissent, even when we are expressing our resistance to what we might think as an unjust law. And that is a continuous process. What I am saying is that our commitment to changing the world through law should also include our deeper commitment to challenge unjust laws if need be. And that's a fourth framework for us to understand how do we change the world through law. The fifth framework, I believe, is to protect democracy through rights. I have always, all of us, we are very fortunate that we live in a democracy, and at times we do, crib about it. We feel that our government's ability to take decisions, or to be able to, ensure good governance, or to be able to ensure, development, all these things are at times delayed because of the fact that we are a democracy and some people are unhappy about it. And arguably, people sometimes have made statements and observations that our democracy actually, undermines the ability to grow. I reject all those observations. I strongly believe that the fact that India is a democracy is our strength, and our ability to achieve economic, social, and political development has been only because of the fact that we are a democracy. If at all anything, we would not have achieved whatever we have achieved in the last over 70 years if we were not a democracy. In any case, such a pluralistic society like India, with so many languages and religions and castes and persuasions, cannot be governed by any other means other than a democracy. Having said that, it is also important for us to recognize that because we are a multi-religious democracy and a pluralistic democracy with some form of majoritarianism, in the sense that a single, a large number of Indians happen to be Hindus, it is equally important for us to ensure that there is a robust protection of rights, including protection of rights of our minorities. And time and again, this issue of protection of rights of minorities has been, discussed and debated. And it is important for us to recognize that the strength of our democracy is essentially measured by the ability of our democratic institutions to respect rights, including the rights of our minorities. And so protecting a democratic form of government is one thing, but to ensure that the different organs of the government are essentially governed through a framework of rights. So it's important, be the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary is governed by the constitution, and that no wing of the government can essentially argue that they are supreme. In our country, it is the constitution which is the supreme and not any particular individual or institution. And so to that extent, the character of our democracy is one of constitutional democracy, which is strong foundation of rights and protected. And these rights are indeed protected and are ensured to be protected by all wings of the government. But one of the wings of the government, the judiciary, is which has been given an additional responsibility to adjudicate and to ensure that the constitutional rights and other rights are duly protected. That does not mean that the judiciary is supreme. The constitution is supreme, but judiciary is given a very important responsibility to ensure that the constitutional norms and values are duly protected, and those who are exercising powers in India are conscious of that protection. That's the fifth aspect of changing the world through law. The sixth aspect of changing the world through law is empowering institutions that will render justice. In the Indian context, that you could argue that the judiciary is one such institution, but also there are other institutions, for example, including institutions such as the Election Commission or the National Human Rights Commission or the Central Information Commission or other such institutions, including the institutions which are involved in exercising police functions or overall oversight functions such as Comptroller and Auditor General's Office or the Central Bureau of Investigation. All these institutions are involved in exercising different forms of power that will ultimately ensure that the power holders are made accountable for the exercise of powers. So strengthening institutions and empowering institutions with a view to advancing the goals and aspirations of our constitution and the rules and regulations and laws that have been created under the constitution is a very important task that those who are involved in changing the world through law need to adhere to and need to advance. That's the sixth idea, empowering institutions that will render justice. Seventh idea is something which is directly taking to all of us individuals, being an advocate for social causes. Now, this is a very important concept because this directly takes into the role of individual citizens. To what extent individual citizens have a role to advance the idea of changing the world through law. There are numerous causes in the world that one can spend their life. For example, there are people who contribute to causes relating to environment and climate change. There are people who contribute to causes such as disability. To what extent laws and legal institutions can help people who are physically challenged. There are people who work in the area of wildlife protection. There are people who work in the area of, let's say, wrongful imprisonment and torture and death penalty. So in some ways, the idea of changing the world through law is also about being an advocate, somebody who defends others, rights of others, and in that process contributing to a range of social causes. And so, in fact, this particular aspect of being an advocate for social causes motivates many people to pursue law. In fact, one of the things that law as a discipline and as a career attempts to do is to provide the necessary knowledge, perspectives, skills, and even tools to be an advocate for various social causes. There could be so many people who can advance different social causes, but by virtue of being a lawyer, you potentially can become an advocate for that social cause, to be able to use laws and instruments that are involved in exercising powers with a view to speaking truth to power, and to be able to ensure that those who are exercising different forms of power, they are subjected to accountability, and those social causes that you are advancing are brought into public domain. That's a very important pursuit which a large number of people are engaged when it comes to changing the world through law. The eighth way by which one could be involved in changing the world through law is to be promoting, civil society activism for public interest. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, there are number of, one is, of course, I talked to you about individual social causes. The other is about being part of an organization. There are numerous non-governmental organizations within India, around the world. There are organizations, for example, in India, which are advancing this cause. There is an organization which is called the Human Rights Law Network. A very distinguished lawyer by name Colin Gonsalves is part of that, leading that effort. There are organizations which are more working in research areas, which are advancing this. And of course, internationally, there are organizations such as Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International and many other organizations which are, or Greenpeace, for example, different causes, be it, as I said, in domestically or internationally, which are at the vanguard of promoting civil society activism for public interest. This aspect of promoting civil society activism for public interest is something which we need to cultivate among the law students or aspiring law students, because it has the potential to change the world and make the world a better place. But most importantly, it also has the opportunity for you to devote a good part of your life and career being part of that effort to promote public interest. So that's the eighth idea of promoting civil society activism for public interest. Of course, the ninth idea is something which lawyers tend to do a lot, but it is at times not given enough importance. That is the very traditional, very classic, role of dispute resolution through law. And here I am not even talking about the role of courts and institutions, including disputes, alternative dispute resolution, including arbitration and mediation and conciliation. In fact, internationally, I want to say that one of the things that is less appreciated and less well known in the field of international law is the entire role of the law of sea. Essentially, how the law of the sea evolved towards ensuring a very peaceful and very consensual dispute resolution mechanism, and how the entire area of maritime law and maritime arbitrations and also dispute resolution in the law of the sea has helped us to be able to advance the cause of international law, so that nations don't end up having wars because of their own aggressive positioning or posturing when it comes to the high seas and their own assertion of the parts of the high seas themselves. So in some ways, dispute resolution has numerous characters. It need not be only in the field of commercial law. It can be in the field of civil law and other things. In fact, in our own country, many people believe that if we were able to somewhat achieve a closure in the Ram Janmabhoomi dispute resolution, or rather the judgment in that case, the Babri Masjid case, was that a lot of things that had happened behind the scenes through the mediation process led by some of the very distinguished mediators. In fact, one of the very distinguished mediators who were involved in it is a lawyer by name Sriram Panchu. from Chennai. Sriram Panchu is a very distinguished lawyer, somebody who has been part of the consumer movement in India for a very long time. And he was also a member of that Supreme Court appointed dispute resolution, or rather mediation committee. The very slow, very gradual and very tactful, very strategic role played by that mediation process did lay the foundations for the judgment when it comes to its acceptability by a large part of the community across the various religions involved. So I want to say that this is one area which works silently behind the scenes, but it has enormous potential to change the world for the better. And the last, I would say the 10th item is that we need to remove social injustices through changing the law, through law reform. And that's another critical area where one can dedicate the life. I talked to you about unjust law before, but this is about contributing towards social justice through changing the law, to improving the law, to be able to build consensus with a view to advancing the ability to make a difference in the law itself. So these 10 dimensions, in my view, are the most important aspects that are critical for us to think in terms of how we can change the world through law. I want to spend a bit of the time now before we open up for a Q&A session to understand why should you study law? What is law? Well, I started by saying that you can change the world through law, and I sincerely believe by it. But it's also important for us to have some understanding of what is law. And so I would like to identify 5 factors that I believe will help you to understand what is law. First, law is an empowering discipline. It helps you understand and appreciate the entire gamut of humanities and social sciences. It essentially lays the foundations for building a social order. And to understand society better, you need to understand law. And that's why it's an empowering discipline. Second, law helps you understand and develop a better perspective on rights and responsibilities, which will in turn help you recognize the importance of transparency and accountability in all exercise of powers. To understand rights and responsibilities means you will be in a position to understand how do you ensure that powers that are exercised by people are transparent, and when they don't exercise transparency, they are made accountable for that. Third notion of law is law helps organize our society. It creates a structure of governance and distribution of various powers across different levels of government. It establishes the relationship between citizen and the state, including the rights of the people and the duties and obligations of the state. Determining the relationship between the citizen and the state is a very critical role that law plays, because on that and upon that determination will only emerge the rights of the people and the duties and obligations of the state. The fourth aspect of law is law enables the fulfilling of rights and freedoms by protecting and advancing the rights and freedoms through institutions such as the courts. And I mentioned about that role. These institutions, such as the courts, are involved in dispute resolution and also delivering justice. This role is one of the most contested and a more public role that law plays, and is constantly involved in meeting different types of social expectations. The fifth role that law plays is law creates a regulatory environment that will ensure a fair and a transparent system of governance. Today, law is all pervasive. Every aspect of our life is regulated by law, and this aspect of law becoming all pervasive is going to determine the regulatory aspects of law. So I want to end and then open this my talk for a Q&A session by saying that changing the world through law is a very big task. Distinguished individuals before us, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, numerous individuals in different walks of life have used law, challenged existing law, and in many ways created institutions and themselves began to recognize the role of law when they challenged those unjust laws and helped build a new social, economic, and political and just order. So, in some ways, as I look at the future, I am convinced that the role of law is going to be profound and significant. I strongly believe that in India and around the world, as we look at the future, our attempts to establish a society based upon the rule of law, both domestically and internationally, is going to be the most important public and common good that we as individuals and nations will pursue. As we also recognize the significant role of governments, it is also important for us to recognize that all exercise of powers need to be regulated by law. And this is a very important principle which needs to be applicable not just in ordinary times, even during emergencies. Today, when the world is facing a public health emergency, when we are attempting to address how do we ensure that the kind of rights that we have envisaged for us, the kind of freedoms that we have protected for us, to what extent these rights and freedoms need to be protected and promoted during an emergency of that kind, law does provide guidance, both domestic and international law. A very delicate balance need to be achieved when it comes to protecting rights and freedoms on the one hand, and to some extent, compromising them for pursuing a larger cause, in this case, protecting the right to life itself. In fact, in international law, there have been guidance provided for precisely achieving these type of balances. In fact, as some of you may be knowing that India is the party to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the ICCPR. India has both signed and ratified the ICCPR, and there are international law obligations that arise out of this rights. And one of the things that the ICCPR does is to ensure that countries which are under international law obligation to protect that rights, they need to ensure that they are indeed adhering to those rights. And of course, a very interesting example of how emergency type situations have been envisaged is what is known as the Syracuse principles on, to what extent, what kind of guidance that international law can provide when it comes to derogation of fundamental rights in certain situations. So after we finish this talk, when you get time, go into Google and look at something called the Syracuse principles on derogation of fundamental rights under the ICCPR. And it really details the various scenarios by which you can have some derogation, and it talks about public health. It talks about during public health emergencies what kind of exceptional measures can be introduced, which at times can potentially undermine for a period of time certain other rights and freedoms that are envisaged. And so I want to bring that into the context is that law becomes a very important way by which we can organize society. We can create structures of power. We can create accountability. We can make sure that people have faith in our institutions. And so I have always believed that there is enormous potential for changing the world through law. And we need to change the world indeed for the better, and law becomes one of the most powerful social institutions to advance that cause. It has been a pleasure to engage with you. I am very delighted that you all patiently heard what I said. I am now eagerly looking forward to answering your questions. Please feel free to write to us as right now, this program is going to open up for Q&A session, and I'll be happy to take your questions. Thank you very much.
So a lot of questions have come up, and actually there are many, but I have sorted them. And the first question I would like to put has come from Yashvi Goyal. Yashvi is attending the session from the very beginning. She has asked many questions, but one she asked very first is, Jindal Global Law School, does it provide a good support system of faculty members which can help me really bring new changes? Because I really want to change the world. And she also asked why most politicians are lawyers.
This is Yashvi, right? You say Yashvi?
Yashvi Goyal, yeah.
All right, Yashvi Goyal, thank you very much for your question. Yashvi, it's a great question. I have not explained a lot about our own law school. I'm sure we will do another program for that. We do believe that we have a world-class law school with outstanding faculty members from around the world. These individuals have come from different walks of life and are from countries around the world, and they are absolutely engaged in precisely the pursuit of law and to seek social change. So we do have opportunities both in terms of our curriculum, our programs, our clinical experiences, our moot court and advocacy programs, all of them continuously interested and engaged with the task of precisely fulfilling what you wanted, which is to change the world. And I'm very happy that you are going to, sometimes I wonder, a lot of young people today want to enter law because they can make a lot of money. I have no problem with that so long as you make the money legally and you are paying taxes for it. But personally, it means a lot for us as teachers when people like you who have a deeper sense of idealism to make a world a better place who are coming into the study of law. One of the things, answering a question about why politicians, I would like to believe that a lot of politicians are entering, have legal qualifications because at least in the Indian context, clearly the role of a legislature, both as a member of parliament and an MLA, he or she is involved in making laws. And the whole process of making laws becomes a very important role that a legislature does. A cynic will argue that law can potentially help politicians if they are at times engaged in the wrong side of law. I would like to believe that it is for the first reason why many people who might be interested in pursuing public life actually end up having legal qualifications.
So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, Anand, we should be fast. We should take more questions. Can you quickly
now? Sure. So I have listed some 5 questions where students have asked about specific areas of law. So Tirath has asked, what is the scope of medicine and law? And Divya Harish wants to know about career prospects in corporate law, as well as how international law and its scope today. There's another.
Tirath, law and medicine becomes a very important discipline, not only because of today what we are seeing, even before. There are areas such as the entire malpractice law, area of law, which becomes very important. I also want to say that, you see, at the end of the day, one of the remarkable aspects of law as a discipline is it's an all-encompassing discipline. If you are involved in law, in the long scheme of your career, particularly when you are engaged in legal practice or in even in corporate law firm, you might be involved in determining the role of law in so many areas. So, for example, euthanasia is another area of law where law and medicine does come into play, but it also adds issues surrounding ethics and morals and privacy. Or for example, if you're working in a corporate setting, if you are involved in, say, the pharma practice, to what extent, issues surrounding, the pharmaceutical industry's role, and how, medicines and access to medicines becomes a very important, where there is an interface of law and IP, for example. So in some ways, what I would like you to know is that when you are a lawyer, the opportunity to, enter into so many different areas of law is so profound. And you mentioned about the role, the practice. One of the students asked a question about the practice of corporate law. I mean, this is an area where it is going to be, significantly increasing in the future. It's already well established. More and more young people are entering into law practice, particularly in the field of corporate law, financial law, trade law, investment law, IP, and things like that. So I'm pretty sanguine about the future, and that's why studying law will help you to do it. But what happens in a law school most of the time is that you end up having a very strong foundations in all areas of law that will enable you to specialize in the future.
So there are similar questions. Jahanvi Ghai wants to know the scope of family law in today's world. Is it changing or having new dimensions? And I believe with the NRI and foreign population, which is now having marriage, divorce, succession, every area of family law has evolved much beyond the traditional old time things. So
sure.
There are two more questions, sir. One is about the scope of criminal law, and Nikhil has asked, Nikhil Javali, the scope of cyber law in today's time.
So family law as an area, as a practice area, has also grown quite significantly. There are lawyers who entirely practice in that area. One of the things that as society evolves, more and more consciousness of rights and freedoms is established, and people naturally are empowered to assert those rights. Besides the area of marriage and divorce, there are also areas of property, for example, which has a very important role and connection with the entire gamut of family law. But there is also area of private international law, which is involved in relation to how international law comes in contact with the issues surrounding family law as well. And of course, in contemporary times, there are issues surrounding surrogacy, which has also dominated the discourse surrounding the domestic enforcement of law. So in a way, what I would like to say is, as I started before, law has this profound ability to create a social and economic order that is advancing the cause of justice. Different areas of law contribute to protecting different forms of justice. There was a question about cyber law. A few decades ago, nobody would have thought that these issues are relevant. Today, in our own country and around the world, cyber law and cyber security has become a very strong, very important issue that we need to address. And the heart of, and I believe, artificial intelligence and robotics and machine learning, all the things that we are going to become rapidly get used to, not just in COVID times, but also beyond, will only lead to more and more legal issues that need to be addressed. Law firms and corporations and companies and business enterprises and lawyers and law schools and law researchers will be, grappling with these issues, and that's why there is enormous scope for this in the future as well.
Sir, there is a specific question from Srijan Shekhar Namdev about, can you please tell me about sports law and what are the requirements of doing a sports law program or becoming a sports lawyer?
So that's a fantastic question. We are very fortunate that we have a full-fledged course, a couple of courses on sports law. We actually have a partnership with an Australian university, Queensland University, through whom we do sports law related work. Our faculty and students are deeply engaged on sports law. I expect that this area of practice is going to become big with IPL and many other sporting organizations going global. The issues surrounding organization of sports, the issues not only from the contractual aspect of negotiating sporting rights, broadcast rights, also the conditions of recruiting, auctioning players, and also doping, for example, the whole issue surrounding doping, which issues surrounding drug abuse within the sporting fraternity. All these areas, what to speak of, betting and other illegal aspects of sports. Sports is now today a major aspect of law, and there are law firms and lawyers who are dedicated themselves for pursuing the sports law practice. So we, as a law school, we are very fortunate that we have a few faculty members who work in this field.
Now, what I understand, sir, even the world's largest sports management company, IMG, which manages a sports contract of world's top sports persons, that is founded by a lawyer. So lawyers are actually leading the sports business that way.
Absolutely. And I think one of the reasons that has been the case is disputes happen all the time. And so it's important for law to be ahead of it and to create conditions and circumstances for a fair resolution of disputes, and so that ultimately we are able to fulfill the objectives of that activity, which is to advance the cause of sports. And that's why we need to pay attention to sports law.
So now there are 3 questions regarding admission process. Mr. HS has asked, what is the admission procedure for current year? So I can inform it's the LSAT India exam, but there is a very interesting question from a student. Again, Tirth K said, why are different law entrance exams in our country like IELTS or CLAT or LSAT, which is the most perfect test for students?
So let me try to be as objective as possible. As Anand just mentioned, the Jindal Global Law School admission is based upon only one examination, which is the LSAT. The law school admission test is an examination conducted for most American law schools, nearly 100-year-old examination. It tests you on logical reasoning and analytical reasoning and comprehension. It does not test you on mathematics. It does not test you on legal aptitude. Unlike the CLAT, it does not test you on what is considered general knowledge. I personally think that a test should be able to identify qualities and aspects of let's say abilities in a person to pursue the study of law and to be a successful lawyer. And to that extent, what LSAT does is it recognizes that to be a good lawyer, you need to have a good sense of logical reasoning. To be a good lawyer, you need to have a good sense of analytical reasoning. And to be a good lawyer, you need to have a good sense of comprehension. That's why they test you on these 3 things. It's a very good question. I strongly believe another reason why I am without casting aspersions on any other test, I believe that universities should not be involved in the business of doing testing and entrance examinations. These things should be done by independent organizations which are exclusively vested with the task of conducting tests. Why? The reason we adopted LSAT and not any other test is that we have nothing to do with the test. It's a transparent, independent, autonomous organization which conducts the test. We are not involved in setting of question papers, administering of the test, and anything to do with the test itself. All we do is we get the results, and on that basis, we give admissions. And that is the way testing happens in different parts of the world, including, for example, very reputed tests, GRE and GMAT and SAT and ACT, and of course LSAT. All these tests are done in that manner. There is a case for having testing like that. And if I were to make a suggestion, all Indian law schools should consider going into LSAT, because that test will ensure that you have an independent, transparent way of conducting tests, and no organization need to be bothered with the testing itself, and all we can ensure that the tests are conducted in a professional and transparent manner, ensuring transparency and integrity to the process of testing.
So the next question is about artificial intelligence, and it's asked by Maitreyi Ramdas. She has asked how much artificial intelligence is going to impact legal practice.
Well, it's a very important area. I strongly believe that artificial intelligence has a very significant role in the future. There are already some of the leading law firms in India and around the world are developed areas of practice, including thinking, thought leadership. One of the firms that I am familiar with, where by way of full disclosure, before I name the firm, I should tell you that my wife is a partner and head of the firm. The name of the firm and the Delhi office of the firm is Nishit Desai Associates, and they and Nishit himself, who is a visionary leader in advancing thought leadership in relation to artificial intelligence. They've always had a strong technology legal practice, but they are preparing themselves for the brave new world of how AI can significantly alter the world of legal practice. Of course, I don't want you to think that lawyers will lose their significance. On the contrary, lawyers will play a very big role. But what will happen is potentially the low end of due diligence work that used to be conducted by lawyers can be conducted by AI type technology, including robotics. But when it comes to making judgment and making choices as to what kind of decisions need to be taken, what kind of approaches need to be adopted, what kind of effective legal instruments need to be used, what kind of law needs to be created, what kind of regulatory environment needs to be built, what kind of ethical choices that need to be made, what kind of concerns relating to privacy that need to be protected. All these issues will have to be done by individual lawyers working in law firms as well as in litigation. So I see an enormous role for lawyers as we embrace a brave new world where artificial intelligence and robotics and machine learning will play a significant role.
Sir, there are two questions about the LLM program. I don't know whether the student is aspiring for LLM, but there are questions like what is the prospect of pursuing LLM at Jindal Global Law School if I complete my LLB at Jindal Global Law School?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't give any special privileges for our own graduates. That would not be appropriate. But all students are who have a LLB degree, both whether from Jindal or from outside, are eligible to pursue LLM. But I want to quickly say that this year is very special for us. While we have always had an LLM program which has general LLM in corporate and financial law, LLM in trade and investment law, LLM in intellectual property rights and IT, information technology law, and also those were all residential programs. Last year we started the LLM in energy, environment and climate change as a non-residential LLM program in partnership with the reputed global organization called the Worldwide Fund, the WWF, whose work in environmental law is renowned. We have a residential program and a non-residential LLM program. This year, we will be shortly making a formal announcement, but since you asked a question, I would like to say that this year we are launching the LLM program in online mode, and LLM in corporate and financial law. And this will enable particularly lawyers who are working and who may not want to leave their job, who want to do it in a flexible mode, will be doing it online manner. And of course, the curriculum, the course structure, the program outline, the pedagogical engagement, and all of which is identical, including the selection process of students. We actually use various tests for admission to the LLM program. You can take the LSAT, you can take the CLAT, you can also take the Delhi University's entrance examination for admission to LLM, and we use all the 3 scores. But this year we are also going to make the LLM test online through the JSAT exam. So the LLM entrance examination will go online, so that you could take the JSAT, which is the scholarship Jindal scholastic admission test, which will enable you to join the LLM program. These details will be available shortly in our website, but we are very actively engaged in admitting some of the most outstanding law graduates into our various LLM programs. This year, our LLM will go full circle, having built on a residential and then a non-residential and now an online version.
So the next question is from Gurveer Singh Dhendsa, and Gurveer has asked, Sir, I have applied for BBA LLB in Jindal Global Law School. When I was searching about this law school, I got to know that Jindal is a research-intensive university. So can you help me understand how university goes about its commitment towards research and how a student can be a part of the research?
Thank you very much, Gurveer. You are absolutely right. We are a very research-oriented institution. So I would like to say that there are 5 ways by which a student at Jindal can advance the cause of research. First, a student can be part of one of the 30+ research centers that the law school has, and they can be involved in that. Second, the student can participate and partner with a faculty member and seek his or her guidance in contributing towards publications. And that is about actually engage in writing and advancing their scholarly interests. The third is that we have developed a very active culture of student research colloquium. A student who is interested to pursue research can be part of the student research colloquium that we do at our law school. And the student research colloquium will enable our students to actually write papers, present those papers in front of our faculty members, receive feedback, and we even mentor our students to publish some of those papers that they present. That's a third way by which they can involve themselves. The fourth way by which our students can actively participate is that many of our faculty members receive research grants, and these research grants enable some of our students to be appointed as research assistants with our faculty. They can actively participate in those research projects. And the fifth way by which our students can involve in advancing their research agenda is to be actively involved in seminars and conferences and workshops, which we regularly do. On a given day, Jindal might have 3 or 4 such events happening, and one way by which is to be associated, and these are typically done by the centers themselves, but sometimes by the schools, and to be associated with the centers will enable you to advance your research interests. So it's a vibrant research environment that Jindal Global Law School and other schools in Jindal have promoted, and we invite our students to be part of it.
Great. I mean, it really gives a very good perspective of research at undergraduate level, which really very few law schools can think of. Mr. Natwar Singh is a student who is asking about defense law or lawyers contribute to the defense forces, defense sector.
Yeah, military law, yes, absolutely.
Military.
Yeah, Natwar, thank you so much for that question. Let me tell you, that's a very important area of law. I have some friends. One of my classmates is a person named Sudhanshu Pandey. Sudhanshu is one of the leading military lawyers of the country, and the scope is phenomenal. In fact, this is one area where there is need for a lot more expertise than what we have. There are two elements to it. One is, of course, if you are interested, you can enter into the armed forces to be part of their, military, judicial, wings as well. But Sudhanshu did that as well. And later, of course, he entered into legal practice, and he's one of the top military lawyers. There is phenomenal scope of advancing an effective legal career in military law. Of course, I would say in the early stages of your career, it's good to have a more diversified legal practice. But if you like that area of law, there is scope for specializing in it as well.
So the next question is about the facility of sports for girls, and also the hostel facilities for girls. So
well,
there are three.
We are very fortunate that at OP Jindal Global University, generally we have 50% of our students happen to be women. So it's a very progressive, liberal, institution that does not have any differences when it comes to men and women. There's no question of any type of distinctions or differentiation when it comes to any facilities or any activities or any initiatives that we promote when it comes to men or women. Our university has all kinds of facilities, including a world-class, a swimming pool, an Olympic-sized swimming pool. We have basketball and volleyball and tennis, and of course other sports and games. You might want to go to our website and take a tour of our campus. Our admissions office will be happy to give you more information. But there is a very relatively vibrant culture of sports. I must say that when students come into professional institutions and try to advance their educational agenda, I do believe that they end up spending a lot of time pursuing their studies, and in that process they may not devote enough time for sports. We have created a fantastic, it's a beautiful, nearly 100-acre fully residential green campus with lots of sports facilities available. Every student can make the best use of it. On top of it, we have a very active sports department, a gym, and also many sports trainers and instructors who are constantly attempting to mentor students to be actively involved in sports. So we have a vibrant sports culture, and it'll be wonderful to have. And we also have, because of that, and even before even students come into we have national level champions in a number of sports, including in tennis and in swimming and many other sports.
So I think I will like to add to it. In one area where Jindal Global Law School has done exceptionally well is sports and games. I mean, if you look at the various law university sports fest, most of the times I find our students becoming overall champions in even National Law School Bangalore Fest or NLU Jodhpur Fest, many other law universities, recently in NLIU Bhopal Fest. And we also have a very popular sports fest called Magnus, which attracts law students from around the country. And it's almost 10 acre of university campus is absolutely dedicated to sports facilities. So it's a great place for sports persons as well, though we are not able to provide any relaxation in admission or anything on a sports basis. So the next question, sir, is about internships. There are two questions where a student has asked how internships are provided to the students during 5 years of law program. And there is another question where a student aspiring for 3-year LLB is asking, is it the same internship and placement opportunity for LLB 3-year program students, which is available for 5-year law students? So these two questions.
First of all, I would say that we very strongly believe that the 3-year law program is as important and as significant for us as a 5-year law program. We are one of those few law schools in India which has consistently maintained the 3-year law program. For us is not an afterthought. We started our university with both a 5-year and a 3-year. In 2009, when OP Jindal Global University and Jindal Global Law School was founded, in the first year itself, we started both the programs and have remained so. So from that standpoint, we are very fortunate. We've got some of the most outstanding students from the leading colleges across India and around the world who have, after completing their undergraduation, joined our 3-year law program. And we have, of course, consistently attracted the best minds for people to join after high school in our 5-year law program. Second question is, we value and we place enormous emphasis on internships. We strongly believe that as a university and as a law school, we have created a very, I would say, robust Office of Career Services, whose responsibility is to ensure and enable students to get the best form of internships across their academic career. We also, because of our reputation and our extensive networks and tie-ups and partnerships, we make sure that the leading law firms, the leading corporations, the leading NGOs, the leading litigators, and of course very distinguished judges and others regularly come to our campus, and we connect with them, and we also promote the candidature of our students, and because of which our students have had an outstanding experience. Now, as if this was just not enough within India, we took our exercise global. We have partnership with the Hawaii Supreme Court in the United States and now the New York Supreme Court, in which every year several of our students will pursue what is known as judicial clerkship program in 2 of the Supreme Courts in the United States. Quite unprecedented, and we are the first and only non-American law school to have got this opportunity. We also have international internship programs in some of the leading law firms, including White & Case in New York, and our students have been recruited by Herbert Smith in London, and this has become a regular feature. I can go on, but I want to say that our students have fantastic opportunities to pursue internships both within India and outside India in both corporate and non-corporate settings.
So, sir, we have limited time now, but there are few questions about the fees, about admission process, about whether to fill JGLS form or LSAT form. So I would like to answer all the students that after this session, we send a detailed email along with the law school brochure and the entire admission process to you. So you can go through that. You will find all those information. But 2 questions which have come up very interesting. One is from student Nishka Agrawal. Nishka has asked. Nishka, Nishkha.
Okay, Nishka, great.
Nishka Agrawal. I don't know whether she has, she wanted to type Nishka and became Nishka, but she has a very interesting question. I want to become a criminal lawyer. And don't you think if I do an honors in psychology and then I studied LLB, that will be a better way to become a good criminal lawyer than doing a 5-year law program? So whether I should combine psychology and law?
Nishka, it's a great question. I appreciate it. So listen, I think, let me first by saying that there are 2 ways. If you're a high school student, you have a choice to make. You could either pursue a 5-year integrated LLB program and join that, or you could do an undergrad in a discipline that you mentioned. Normally, if you were looking at a non-Jindal context, I would strongly encourage you to do what is known as a 3+3 program, because I must say that most of our law schools don't pay attention to the study of humanities and social sciences. They don't have well qualified professors in psychology or sociology or history or philosophy or anthropology or literature or economics, all of which lay the foundations for becoming an effective lawyer. So if you're looking at a non-Jindal context, I would strongly encourage you to do an undergraduate degree in another discipline. But if you are looking at Jindal, it will depend upon your personal interest, because we have opportunities both ways. We have fantastic programs that will focus on the study of sociology. You have a whole range of cross-listed electives offered by our liberal arts school, including an institution that we have known as the Jindal Institute of Behavioral Studies, JIBS, which offers over 25 courses in psychology and organizational behavior and forensic science and other type of courses. So the opportunity to pursue these courses are available because we are not a law university. We are a multidisciplinary, full-fledged university with 9 different schools, and each of which providing opportunities. But it's a choice that you have to make. Both has its own advantages. I did my 3-year undergrad in BCom and then did my law, but I know there are very good friends and people who have done integrated programs. So I leave the choice to you. But if it's about Jindal, you won't make a mistake either ways.
Sir, I would like to add a point to it. After class 12, if there is absolute clarity that I want to become a lawyer or I want to study law, one should choose the 5-year law program. You save a year, and you also get ample opportunity to study courses. If you choose BLLB honors, there is psychology 1, psychology 2, there are 2 courses. Then you study criminology, victimology.
Anand, with all due respect, I will disagree with you slightly, Anand, because I would say that that's a choice which students should make. I think the option to study a 5-year or 3-year should not be based upon you save a year. I think it's really, when you go into a full-fledged 3-year undergrad program, you learn a lot. I mean, the experience of pursuing a solid degree in social sciences and humanities. In fact, one of the reasons why we started the 3-year BA honors in legal studies in our law school is precisely to advance the idea that there are people who might want to go deep into study of law, particularly non-procedural, substantive, and historical and philosophical and sociological dimensions of law, not necessary to practice law in the future. Even, for example, somebody wants to say, to pursue criminal law, the study of liberal arts, for example, might actually help that person to become an effective lawyer in the years to come. So I believe, I think it's a personal choice students should make. If it's a question of Jindal, we offer imagination for different types of people. If you want to pursue law directly, you can come into the 5-year law program. If you want to pursue law with an option to exit in 3 years, you could join the BA honors in legal studies. If you want to pursue humanities and social sciences, you can join the BA honors in global affairs, BA honors in social science and policy, BA economics, BA liberal arts, BA journalism, BCom, BBA, a whole range of undergraduate programs that we have. And after which you can, if you decide you want to study law, you could come to the law school and pursue the 3-year LLB program. In a way, today, it's about the student who is making the choice and not us.
Perfect, sir. I agree. So maybe we can take 2-3 more questions. So student Kamlesh Chaudhary, and he has asked, if I want to practice law in the UK, will a BA LLB degree from Jindal Global Law School help me?
So Kamlesh, one thing which I will say, thank you very much for the question, Kamlesh. You see, law is still a highly regulated profession. Every country regulates the legal profession. Of course, India regulates the profession much more than many. So if you ask me technically, after having studied law at Jindal, can you practice law in the United States or UK? Of course you can, and there are many who do. In fact, several of our alumni are doing that. But there will be a process associated with that. In the UK context, you will have to fulfill a legal practice course, articleship, and things like that. If you're looking at United States, you need to appear in the bar examination. So there are additional regulatory requirements that anybody who needs to fulfill after they can engage in legal practice. Of course, the foundation of it is the degree from India and from Jindal, and so it will enable you to do better. One of the advantages of studying at Jindal is that we have a very strong, well-developed emphasis on the study of international law, comparative law, foreign law, because of the fact that nearly 20% of our faculty members are non-Indian nationals recruited from over 30 countries in the world. All these things have enabled us to create a very strong international and comparative law element and imagination to our curriculum. That's why a student who studies at Jindal has an advantage over many because of this strong emphasis.
So I'm just looking at other questions, and there are quite a few, and we have limited time, but there is a very different question.
Anand, listen, I want to say this, that students and parents have taken a lot of effort to be part of this call. So I would like to devote additional time to answer their questions. So let's take all questions so that everybody feels that they are part of this, because these are very difficult times for both parents and students. Everybody is confined at home, and although I have another meeting now, but I will postpone that because I would like to address all the questions that the parents and students are addressing.
So, sir, there is a question on how does competition law contribute in changing the world, from Udita Dubey. So Udita has asked a question about competition law, which is a new area of law, and how it is helping the world.
So listen, Udita, this is a very important area of law, which has in recent times attained great significance. As you know, we have a Competition Commission of India, which has expanded and developed its own mandate. You see, one of the things, one of the important areas of the commercial world is to how do we ensure that monopolistic practices do not undermine the free flow of transactions in a commercial world. Competition law, as it is called in India, in the US it's called antitrust law. The purpose of competition law is to ensure that there is fair competition. And so fair competition that will ensure that the consumers and the people, the customers and consumers are able to be given the right kind of choices and are able to make informed decisions. And that's why we need to have a robust competition law and competition, violation intervention through institutions such as the CCI. So I expect that this role of the Competition Commission and competition law to become stronger. I still think we are in the very nascent stage of the evolution of this area of legal practice. Law firms, some of them are well known for it. I know of a law firm called Economic Laws Practice, ELP, has historically had a very strong area of practice in competition law, but other leading law firms, I'm sure, including Ketan and Company and Amarchand Mangaldas and AZB and Trilegal and other firms have competition law practice. It's also very important for us to recognize that these issues of regulating the competitive behavior and intervening in anti-competitive practices adopted by firms is also about enforcing the rule of law. And that's why we need to take competition law seriously. Not many law schools have a very strong competition law faculty. We are very fortunate. Jindal has over 10 amazing faculty members who work in the field of competition law. They have done extensive work, including teaching and research.
Sir, the next question. There are two questions very similar. Student Vyom Shah, he has asked, sir, what are the advantages of Jindal Global Law School over NLUs? And there is another question of Vaibhav Pratap Singh, who says, what makes JGLS better than most of NLUs, and how are the placements at Jindal Global Law School? So I understand.
Who are the two people? Who are the two people you said? Names of the people?
Vaibhav Pratap Singh and Vyom Shah.
Vyom. Babu Pratap Singh and Vyom Shah.
Ji.
Okay, thank you, Babu and Vyom, for those questions. As the Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal Global University, I have a policy not to talk about other institutions, such as the national law schools. Each one of them have their own, role and responsibility. But I can definitely speak about Jindal. And I believe, after having spent over 20 years in the field of law, after having practiced, taught law in numerous jurisdictions, after having studied law in 4 jurisdictions, that I don't think there is any law school in South Asia which is like Jindal. We are a unique institution that has advanced the cause of global legal education with the single most important purpose of producing world-class lawyers in a world-class law school. And so I would like to say that if you were to identify what constitutes a world-class law school, you need to have a 5-point test. This 5-point test is what will determine whether a law school is world-class or not. And you can use that test objectively. First, faculty. The first and most important test of a great institution is the quality of its faculty. Second, the quality of its, and here quality of its faculty is, it's their educational qualifications, their experience, their publication record, their ability to make a contribution, all of that. It's all out there to measure. It's not opinions of me or you or anybody else. Second, the research ecosystem and the research environment. To what extent the law school is advancing the research. I mentioned early on, our law school has 30+ research centers. Law schools have a very big role to contribute to research and scholarship. And so the second most important is to what extent a law school is contributing towards advancing the research environment. The third is the publication track record of the faculty. To what extent the faculty members are at the vanguard of contributing to research through publications. Why this is important? This exactly translates into effective teaching pedagogy. It exactly translates into opportunities for faculty members and students to interact about the cutting edge issues of law. It exactly translates into inspiring conversations that happen between the faculty and the student within the classroom context. 4, the opportunities to pursue international programs. What are the partnerships that the law school has? To what extent the law school enables students to pursue student exchange programs, dual degree programs, short-term study abroad programs. For example, we have partnership with Cornell Law School. We have partnership with the Columbia Law School. We have partnership with Berkeley Law School. We have partnership with over 200 law schools around the world in which we have implemented collaborative programs. So the 4th is to what extent the law school is promoting internationalization. The 5th is the entire gamut of career development, not just internship and placement, career development, which includes higher education opportunities, internships, placements, and not just in corporate firms, in non-governmental organizations, intergovernmental organizations, think tanks, research institutions, in litigation, even in judiciary, in competitive examinations. If you apply this test and start looking at the results, I believe that Jindal Global Law School will emerge as not only the #1 in India, but also the #1 in Asia. And that has just been proven. The world's most prestigious law school rankings, the QS university rankings, which ranks law schools around the world, they have ranked 300 law schools in the world just a few weeks ago. It is one of the most credible, international, independent, autonomous, transparent rankings organizations in the world, and they have ranked only 300 law schools in the world out of the nearly 15,000 law schools. And I want to say that out of the 1,600 law schools in India, only 2 law schools have been identified and have ranked among the top 300. And out of the 2 in India, Jindal Global Law School is ranked 101, and National Law School of India, University Bangalore, is ranked 151, thereby Jindal becoming the #1 law school in India, #1 in Asia, #1 in South Asia, and top 10 in BRICS, and top 20 in Asia, and 101 in the world. In a way, I would like you to measure the quality of an institution on the basis of the 5 criteria that I had told you.
Great, sir. So, sir, there are 2 questions. Before I ask you, there is a question from Saheli Biswas about, she needs some information about LLM and PhD law program at Jindal. But before that, there is a very interesting question from a gentleman, Ankit Kumar. And he has actually written very nice English, but his worry is that, sir, if my English language is not good, should I join a law degree at Jindal Global Law School? And is there any system to support me to better my English language skills to study law?
Thank you very much, Ankit, for that question. Ankit, it is quite natural for all of us, or at least many of us who may not be, whose first language may not be English, to be slightly having some degree of reluctance and not sure about how good we are. All of us are in the same boat. I cannot claim to have, a fantastic English language abilities, and I have improved over the years, and I have no qualms to confess that when I went to law school, when I went to college, my English was not as good as how it is now, and even now I have enormous scope for improvement as well. So I want you to rest assured that you don't need to be concerned about it. Having said that, definitely there is no doubt about the fact that proficiency in English language is important for you to attain highest levels of distinction and excellence in legal career, both in terms of your writing and ability to speak and articulate and all of that. The Jindal Global Law School and the OP Jindal Global University provides enormous, opportunities, both in the form of what we call the English Language Center and the Center for Writing Studies. We have 2 dedicated centers which are specifically involved in capacity building for our students who may feel that their level of proficiency in English is not as much as they would like to be, and these 2 centers are advancing, and helping students to pursue that. So I'm quite sanguine about your success in being part of those centers and advancing your interests.
So now the question, and also I would like to add one point. It's English Language Center and Center for Writing Studies, as well as all other centers. If a student is studying at the law school, they do not have to pay any fee for that. As well as there is a foreign language center in 5 years program or 3-year LLB program. One can learn Mandarin Chinese or Spanish or French or all those foreign languages which are offered in the university. absolutely free along with your law degree, and you can further enhance your opportunities. So the LLM and PhD question from Saheli Biswas, I will like you to take, sir.
Yes, please. Saheli?
Yeah, she has asked what are the LLM and PhD programs of the universities and the opportunities?
Saheli, we have a very active, so the Center for Postgraduate Legal Studies, as mandated by the University Grants Commission, is a nodal institutional, setup that we have. But we have a very active, one of the things that we are very fortunate is that we have some of the most illustrious individuals who have made a mark in the legal education arena in India. Professor M.P. Singh, who was my mentor, who used to be the Dean of the Faculty of Law, University of Delhi, who was the Vice Chancellor of National University of Juridical Sciences, Calcutta. He has joined Jindal Global Law School, this year and last year, and he basically is one of the doyens of the field, and he heads our doctoral studies program at our law school. We have also have Professor B.S. Chimney, who is a very distinguished professor, used to be at JNU, and also was Vice Chancellor of the National University of Juridical Sciences, Calcutta. He has joined us. He also is involved in the doctoral program. Professor Upendra Bakshi has joined us. He also will be happy to supervise people. Professor B.B. Pandey, another very distinguished criminal law scholar. So besides very illustrious scholars like these people, we also have a large number of amazing young talent recruited from across India and around the world. So our doctoral programs reflect our strong commitment to excellence, and we believe that we need to create the next generation of legal academics, and there is no other way or no better way than invest our intellectual resources towards advancing the cause of doctoral education.
So there are two questions which students have asked about the judiciary option. A student, Sana Agarwal, she asked, can a Jindal law graduate join judiciary? And there is another question, whether a BA LLB better or a BBA LLB better if becoming a judicial officer is the career goal.
So, well, let me say this: we have a fantastic data on that. Increasingly, several of our students are entering into judicial careers, and I'm very happy to report. Anand, can we say 2 or 3 of our students in recent times have topped the judicial career examinations?
Shipra Dhankar, one of our graduates, she was rank 1 in Delhi Judiciary this year in 90. So Delhi Judiciary is considered to be the most prestigious and difficult judicial services exam. So she got rank 1 there. And in previous year Delhi Judicial Services in 2018, another of our student, Dev Chaudhary, got rank 2. And I remember there are students who have qualified Haryana Judiciary, Punjab Judiciary. Recently, a student has qualified Rajasthan Judiciary. So I must tell Sana that our students are already joining judicial services, and rather topping the exam, getting rank 1 in the All India exam is not easy. But other question I would like you to handle, sir, which program should one prefer if he wants to become a judicial officer, a BA-LLB program or a BBA-LLB program?
So let me tell you that this distinction is relatively a very marginal distinction, both of which are law-related programs. You will study identical set of law courses, whether you do BA LLB or BBA LLB. The only distinction is that in the first couple of years, the emphasis in the BBA LLB will have some number of management related courses, including marketing and business management and things like that. and in the BA LLB you will have broader humanities and social sciences. Other than that, there is no such distinction. In any case, either of these courses does not create any handicap whatsoever. Both are seen equally important and significant for the pursuit of all areas and all careers in law. So you need not have any concerns whatsoever as to the choices that you make between BA LLB or BB LLB will in any way impact on the future decisions regarding your career choices.
So the next question is from Tanvi Nimje. And Tanvi has asked about specializations available within BA LLB honors. For example, if I'm interested in subjects like economics and international law and psychology, then is there any special additional subject courses during those 5 years? I think we have a lot of electives, and you can throw some light, sir.
Thank you very much. Is it Tanvi, right? Tanvi asked the question, right?
Yes.
So Tanvi, it's a very good question. And this is why I want to tell all of you and all parents and students, it's a very important question because only a full-fledged university can provide this aspiration to a student. A standalone law university, however good it does not have the bandwidth, the capacity, the resources, the faculty, and the institutional policies that will enable students to pursue these options. OP Jindal Global University has 9 different schools: the Jindal Global Law School, the Jindal Global Business School, the Jindal School of International Affairs, the Jindal School of Government and Public Policy, the Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities, the Jindal School of Journalism and Communication, the Jindal School of Art and Architecture, the Jindal School of Banking and Finance, and the Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability. Because of the fact that we have these 9 schools and these nearly 600 faculty, we have the capacity to enable cross-registration of courses so that students across schools can cross-register courses in the different schools. And we don't charge anything. Our students, regardless of whichever schools, can actually take courses in the other school, particularly after their core and elective courses, which they would have done in their respective schools. That is why our university is better positioned to be able to fulfill the aspirations of students.
So,
next question, Anand.
Yeah, so there is a question, a student is asking, which is a better option for me, litigation or corporate law? Kashish is asking this question, asked twice. So it's something.
Kashish, I think it's a very personal choice. In any case, you don't need to make a choice right now. It's important for you to pursue law with a deep sense of commitment and dedication, gather the knowledge and skills and exposure and experience. And as you travel in the journey of the study of law, you will develop your own interest. Neither me nor anybody should make that choice for you. You should make the choice for yourself. But what we should do and we can do is to help you make the choice so that you understand what does it entail for you to actually engage in the practice of corporate law, or what does it entail if it is to engage in litigation practice or whatever. So it's not a choice that you should make now. It's important for you to pursue the study of law, and in that journey you will have an informed understanding as to why you want to do that.
So there is an interesting question from one of the attendees. His name is Himanshu Vasistha. He's an MTech from IIT. and an MBA from Pondicherry University. He is asking, can I do a PhD in law, a part-time PhD in law from Jindal Global Law School? So he has not specified whether he has an LLB and LLM or not, because I believe LLM is a prerequisite
Correct.
for a PhD in law.
So one way to deal with this kind of a unique situation is, at the end of the day, the PhD degree is awarded by the university and not any particular school. Depending upon the qualifications and the theme and the dissertation topic, it may be possible for us to identify supervisors in across different schools, and a more interdisciplinary doctoral research thesis can be envisaged. It will be very difficult for us to give any more information without having a full sense of what the candidate's situation is. But it is suffice to say that we can develop an interdisciplinary approach if the core element of thesis is not necessarily in law alone, if the person does not have law related qualifications.
So we have almost done with most of the questions. Some students are coming back with new queries. Like now Ankit is asking, can I pursue LLB degree in Hindi? So that is not possible.
So one of the things that what I suggest we should do is, I would like to invite all of you to join us tomorrow for a very important panel discussion that we have, which is about law schools and legal careers. Now that panel is a global panel. We have a professor from Cornell Law School, which is an Ivy League institution, Professor Sital Kalantri, and another very distinguished professor by name Professor Jayant Krishnan from Indiana University Maurer School of Law in Bloomington, Indiana, and also moderated by my own colleague and Dean of Admissions, Professor Arya Majumdar. We have that tomorrow evening, I believe at 6 p.m. and I would like to invite many of you to join. That will be a different format. It will be a panel discussion where Dean Majumdar will be asking us questions on the future of law schools and legal careers, not only in COVID and post-COVID type situation, how it's going to impact. So I hope that many of you will join us, and I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you, particularly the parents and students who have been present for the last 2 hours to be deeply engaged. I want to thank all the amazing students who have been raising questions and helped me to think and reflect and respond to your queries in this manner. We will be very delighted to respond to all the queries which have not been answered. As Professor Anand Mishra mentioned, he will also send you details about this. I want to end by saying that as you remain slightly uncertain about your future due to what is happening, I want to assure you that both India and the world will overcome this COVID-19 crisis. We will succeed it and actually will come out much stronger than we were when we started this crisis. It's important for you to have faith and trust on the human capacity and human ability to overcome significantly impactful crisis of the kind that we are facing. Of course, it's also important for us to follow the law, and that is also a way by which we can advance the cause of the rule of law. We need to follow the law and the rules and regulations of social distancing. We need to follow the law and rules and regulations of lockdown. We need to ensure that we are protecting us, our family members, and others in this process. But we also need to remain grateful about our own situation. Many of us might feel inconvenienced today and the last few weeks because of lockdown, but I must say, you and I are privileged. A large number of people in India are today suffering because they have lost their jobs, their future is uncertain, they are single breadwinner, they don't have a workplace today because of which they have no income, their next meal is threatened, their vulnerability is huge, nothing compared to the inconvenience that we might face. So let us do our bit, mostly to remain grateful about what we have got and to complain less about our situation, and to do our bit to those vulnerable, marginalized, and downtrodden people who are far more difficulty situation. Today, the United Nations ILO report has said that 400 million people in India run the risk of getting into poverty on account of the COVID crisis and the ensuing lockdown. Such is the magnitude of the human crisis that we are facing today. So I am confident we will overcome this crisis, and let us all do our bit to ensure that we can come out successfully. Thank you very much for being part of this webinar. It's been a pleasure for me personally. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You will be receiving a mail tonight itself about most of your queries, even our placement brochure and admission brochure and all other details. And we look forward to see you again tomorrow. Thank you.